surrounded by idiots. Actually, rejection is fine and you are good at your job. You're just being consultative, help listen, understand what it is, and then you get better results from that.
Genuine curiosity is your superpower.
Because if it's not going to be right and it's not right for the client, then it falls on our head. It took like 230 days to close.
Welcome to the ISP Next Gen Podcast, where we speak to salespeople about their journeys to help you demystify the profession. Now, today we are joined by Lauren Collins, BDM, Business Development Manager at Chilli Apple. Lauren, thank you so much for joining me today. How are you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. I'm very well. A little bit cold. Got a space heater that's working overtime, but not really making much difference. But anyway, that's besides the point. Did you want to take a minute to introduce yourself and tell the audience a little bit more?
Yeah, sure. I'm Lauren, Business Development Manager at Chilli Apple. We're an agency based just outside of London, and we deliver digital solutions varying from e-commerce, bespoke, SaaS development, mobile apps, and also design. I predominantly, within the business, we work predominantly with a lot of SMEs, but we've just recently started over the last year to scale that to more enterprise.
And what was it that piqued your interest to pursue a career in sales?
When I was at uni, I was like, I never want to be in sales. I think I was quite naive to how sales worked. Like, I thought it was like a boring 9 to 5, like you're just sat in an office, like staring at a wall. I never really realised what it entailed. But when I first started at Chilli Apple, so within the company, I've been here for nearly 5 years now. And I started off as an account exec. But what that was essentially the more like client retention sort of role, customer success. And then over time, I was just growing within that role and sort of was talking to a lot of people talking about like what they were doing and asking like loads of questions that actually led me to over time start scaling and growing those accounts. And I was just like upselling and cross-selling solutions that I didn't even realize that I was doing it. It was just more me being really interested in what they do. So from that, I then had a conversation internally and they were like, look, I think you should go down like the sales role. And I thought, sales? I was like, I never wanted to be in sales. But then I did 2 jobs, was split between like key account and business development manager. And then recently, like in the last sort of 2 years, now working predominantly sales. My role is more solution based, so I have quite a good technical knowledge and understanding. I work very closely with development team to build out solutions. So as much as my role is in sales, it's more solutions driven and looking back at like the wider tech stack and working out for new leads and also existing client base as well. What do you have going on within the business and how can we like digitally transform that? So that's my role and then how I work.
I think genuine curiosity is your superpower by the sounds of things, and it's definitely helped you to get to where you are today. Now on that journey, I'm sure it wasn't all smooth sailing, as it never is in sales. There's always a couple of hurdles and roadblocks chucked in there. But were there any challenges that you faced early on in your career, and how did you overcome them?
I am a perfectionist and I also am a massive overthinker, but also I'm really competitive. So when I first started in sales, I just wanted to win everything. And I think I obviously underestimated the time and energy spent that I would spend so much time and energy talking to all the leads that came into the business. And actually I was just sort of burning myself out because I wasn't prioritizing certain types of leads. I was just going in full force, spending night and day on these leads. And actually it got to the point where I was just constantly thinking about work. I still do think about work, but when I first started, it was relentless. I just, every deal that I didn't win, I would take it really personally. I'd be like, what did I do wrong? Like, why was that? Like, I just couldn't really fathom that rejection. But I think over time, as I've worked more solely into new business, I've understood what companies I want to work with, what time and energy I want to spend looking into those companies. And also, like, is it a right fit for the agency? Is it somebody that we want to work with? And also, like, what's the value? Like, are we going to be able to add value to that business? But also, like, can they add value to ours? I think I've then sort of started to learn that it's much more of a wider partnership. And also, like, you can't win every single lead. And obviously you prioritize it and you work out with like qualifying leads, like who's actually worth the time. Also, like, just in terms of like my personal life, I've actually started reading a lot more like self-help books. Like, my manager a few years ago, or last year actually, it was recommended that I read The Imposter Cure. And so learning about like imposter syndrome, and that actually rejection is fine and you are good at your job. And also the other one I read was, which is really good, I would recommend, is Surrounded by Idiots. So you understand different personality types. And that also helps to understand that when you are talking to people, you get to know what their personality is like, to then understand how you deal with those type of people. And would 100% recommend reading that book. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to add it to my reading list as soon as we get off. And in terms of imposter syndrome, it is one of those crucial elements because it signifies that you're growing, right? Feeling uncomfortable. You touched on a couple of things there that I'd love to dive a little bit deeper on. Initially, that prioritization piece and finding and engaging with the right people. As you alluded to, prospecting is the foundation of all sales success. And without that robust pipeline, everything becomes harder. You can't necessarily act in a truly buyer-centric way because you have your ulterior motive of hitting your number. Whereas if you have plenty of pipeline, you can say, do you know what? It's not actually a great fit. Yeah. Now, as you mentioned, the challenge isn't necessarily just figuring out who those right people are, but actually reaching out and engaging them in a meaningful way. So what are some of the most effective ways that you've gone about identifying and researching potential prospects?
Yeah, so in terms of how we work, so I think it's really important to look at data. So looking at, if you use a CRM, using that, like, we're in and out of our CRM every single day. It's the first thing I open in the morning, as well as the pipeline. But really understanding like what's in your current CRM, like who's the people that you speak to on a daily basis, what industry are they in, what issue did they have to begin with, and what was the solution that we put in place. And I think using that data to understand what is the ICP. Is it changing? Are we looking at, we're getting more, I don't know, like what's the industries that are coming in? Is it more technical industries? Is it construction? Like, we work with so many different types of industries, but I think really looking at that data to understand, actually, we did that project that we finished was such a good project. It was something that was like, it went from smooth sailing from start to finish. And just using that data to look at what companies you want to outreach to and the type of companies that you do want to work with, because you know that it was a successful partnership. It worked for them and it worked for you. So I think just building out the ICP, looking at like the shifts, and just using that data. I think that's the main thing, really.
Yeah, indeed. I think creating those lookalikes, right? Where have we proved value within our existing client base, and how can we go after those that are similar, facing the same challenges, looking to embark on the similar project? And I completely agree. Without the visibility over the data, it's really difficult to impossible to make an informed decision, really, about prioritizing your time. Now, once you've created that focus account list, so to speak, how do you go about targeting the right people within that target account?
Obviously, any salesperson wants to be talking to the decision maker at the end of the day. It's not always the case. You can't always get to the decision maker, but maybe you could get to somebody near that level of decision making, or maybe they work very closely with a CEO or something. So I think have a look at, if there's certain businesses that you want to target and you want to outreach to, do the research before and also look at the data that you already have. Who do you currently talk to at the moment? And are you able to build the relationships with, I don't know, people within marketing, people within operations? Like, who do you normally talk to? And then use that company data to then see, okay, who is on LinkedIn? Is there anybody active on LinkedIn within that business that might be within operations that maybe you could make a connection with, maybe follow, like a couple of bit of the content that they're posting on their LinkedIn, and then use that as a strategy to then target the right people. But yeah, I think at the end of the day, you want to be talking to the decision makers, ideally, if you can.
Yeah, certainly. And I think you alluded to a great point about building the influence within the rest of the account when you can't go directly to that decision maker, and trying to get insights that you can then use in the outreach, or even get an intro via some of those people that you're speaking to. Now, how do you go about balancing the outbound prospecting activities with perhaps any inbound leads that you may be getting? And as well, by the sounds of things, there's also a responsibility of yours to engage with existing clients, right? How do you go about balancing your time across those areas?
You've got to be really particular with your time management. And I think you've got to look at what's important. And I think you've got to look at like the wider scale of things. Like, you could have, like, we get a lot of inbound leads, and I think you've got to qualify them first. Once you've done that qualification, who are the people that you really want to speak with when they initially come through as through the website or something? If they are a hot lead, you've got to give them that attention straight away, because at the end of the day, if it was me maybe looking for, I don't know, wanting to build an app, I probably would send the same inquiry to like 5 or 6 different agencies. And then whoever comes back to me first, I'll be like, okay, yeah. And then I'm then going to continue the conversation with that. So I think having a really good sort of with your inbound leads, especially, what's the right lead for you? Is it something that you could be like, look, this is a really quick win. I can definitely 100% get in contact with them right now and build that relationship with them. And then in terms of like the outbound lead, similar to what we've been talking about, is like the targeting of that prospect and leveraging that data to then have the insight of who will be a high like potential account that you could then personalize that outreach to. I think it's all about like the data, prioritizing the leads, qualifying them, asking them the right questions. If you don't think that it's that much of a good lead, then it doesn't mean that you just ignore them, but maybe you send a bit more of like a template answer in terms of like, look, this is the budget that you would need to build an app. This is the time frame. Does that work for you? And then just like leave the ball in their court.
Yeah, agreed. I think that's where those nurture cadences, and sometimes being intentionally a little bit evocative, is that the right word? As you said, okay, this is how much it typically costs, and this is how long it takes, and then just waiting to see is it a fall off the chair moment, or are they genuinely interested, and is there a genuine opportunity there, which is great. Now, I want to move into a bit more detail on that outbound prospecting, so that proactive outreach. It's quite a tricky part of the role, whether it's because there's just so much noise out there and it is so saturated, or as you mentioned earlier, that fear of rejection that might be playing on salespeople's mind. But being proactive is key. Being really intentional with the outreach is key. So how do you stay proactive rather than just being purely reactive in your prospecting approaches? I'm sure there's sometimes maybe a bit of a temptation to do so when you've got a lot of inbound leads, right?
You're right. It is tricky because there are so many leads that we get, because where it's so broad, like we do e-commerce, bespoke apps, a lot of people call up and they're like, oh, I had an idea last night for an app and I want to build something like Tinder. And it's like, right, have you actually done the research for that? Do you know what it's like? So I think basically you need to have a good strategy in place, and you need to have really good tools in place where you can make sure that you're not, you need to be proactive in that outreach. Like, we use certain tools that allow us to see who's on the website.
Okay.
So there's just a small bit of code that we have on our website, and it allows us to track what companies have visited our website, what pages have they looked at. So that allows us to proactively get in touch with those companies and also like be more sort of transparent, but also consultative in our approach within the content. Because at the end of the day, now, if we work in tech, I don't think it's too much of a shock that we don't know who's on our website. I think the way that AI is and stuff like is pretty normal. But I think having that allows us to be more proactive. And our messaging is, look, hey, I've seen that you've been on our website. You was on, I don't know, looking at our e-commerce page, looking at our apps page. Just wanted to know like what it was that you were looking for, like how can we help? If it's a particular industry that you know, or a company within that industry that you know that you work well with, and you have like a good case study or examples of your work, then maybe get in touch and say, look, we work with a lot of companies like yours. These are like the digital solutions that we've implemented. These are the results. Is that something that you want to like discover more? And just be really friendly about it as well. Like I think having that more subtle approach is a lot more receptive from the people that are getting that email. We get a lot of really positive responses when we're being really openly transparent in terms of, look, seen you've on our website, like how can we help? And I think, just being consultative, helping that person understand what it is, and then you get better results from that.
Yeah, agreed. And I would even say lean into that creepiness, let's say, because it's pretty much common knowledge that the businesses will be tracking activity on the website. So, for example, when I worked at a tech company called Vidyard, I thought, how can I lean into the creepiness? So I used to record a video of me with binoculars waving at them, and then would sort of say, "Oh, I spotted you. Check this page out." Typically, that arises some questions. So you got to have fun with it as well, I'd say. Nice. Now, how do you go about balancing a multi-channel approach to outreach? You've touched on email, calls, LinkedIn as well. What's your go-to structure for any cadences or any outreach?
We have a particular cadence that we follow, and that's like the life cycle of the prospecting. And I think it's important to like not just stick to one thing, not just stick to emails, not just stick to LinkedIn, but also you've got to be mindful that you don't want to be a busybody everywhere and bombarding people with messaging and things. But we use LinkedIn, emails, socials, and also like calling people up. So I think we're quite successful with our outreach because, well, like I said, we're completely transparent. But having those different channels, I think it's important to note that if someone's really active on LinkedIn, maybe just message them on LinkedIn if that's something that they're always on and they're always actively, look like really posting, adding content. Also, like engage with their content as well. Like it's fine to engage with people's content and not just be a salesperson trying to sell them something. I think having a bit more of like a subtle approach and building a relationship that you think, rather than just going full force in, like, how can we help? Like, is there anything that, what you're looking for?
But being human, right? It's such a good point. I think people see someone with a job title that contains sales or a sales associated job title, and they think, well, the only thing that they're going to talk about is their product. And granted, there's been some bad apples that have caused that, and some bad approaches, and a couple of fantastic Hollywood movies as well that have painted us in perhaps not the most flattering light, but typically we're quite a helpful bunch, I'd say. So we do like to engage and build a relationship, so that's great. And to your point, I think it's all about meeting buyers where they are. You touched on those different personality types. There's also different preferences that people have in terms of methods of communication. So it's about finding what those are and then being present there, which is great. Now, in terms of remaining consistent in the outreach, because it's incredibly rare that it is a one-off message or call, and then you're into an opportunity. So how do you go about, or how would you advise someone to remain consistent with their outreach approach?
To remain consistent, you just need to keep going. I think there's sort of, you've got to set yourself tasks. I think you've got to dedicate that time to do your outreach. I think it's really important to say, right, okay, today within the next hour, I'm just going to focus on outreaching to a particular type of company within an industry. Yeah. And also, I think that you can have things in place to help you work smarter. Like having content templates, for instance. Like we have various different templates that we use, and it's not something where you copy and paste it and then you send it in an email, but it's just, you can use that as guidance to say, okay, like maybe I could go off that topic, or maybe I could look down that route. Researching as well, like before you need to make sure that you've got the research to outreach and deliver that content. But like as an agency, like you shouldn't neglect your outreach, even if you've got like a really good pipeline at the moment. In sales, you can't have one good quarter and then one really bad quarter. You've got to make sure that you're not neglecting that pipeline, because at the moment, I've got so much in the pipeline. It's fine. Like, because things chop and change so quickly. I'm constantly in the pipeline, and one week I might look at something and think, oh God, like there's not much in there. Like where's it all gone? But then the next week you've like tripled it. So you just got to stay consistent. I think you've got to stay personable to people that you're talking to. I think like recently I was talking to a company, started talking to them at like spring last year about a particular solution that they wanted at that time. And then over the course of like 9 months, they completely changed their like tactic. They changed what they wanted, because businesses change, like decisions change, things happen. And also the market changes as well. Like there's so much that goes on that can influence your decision on what solution, what digital transformation that you want. Yeah. So we started talking to this company in like May time last year about one particular product. Constantly was in touch with them every single month, moving on for like the next like 6 months. And I thought, I don't know if I should sort of carry on, because I don't know where this is going to go. But then I recently closed that deal, I think it was like the end of last month, with a completely different solution. But it took like 230 days to close. I nearly did give up. I nearly thought, do we just keep going? Because I don't know where I'm going with this, but you just got to be consistent.
Consistency in the outreach and persistence as well with those deals that you're just never quite sure of. But as you said, I think being able to not get too caught up in that moment, being able to lift your head and look forward, also helps with not only the consistency piece and ensuring that there's sufficient quality pipeline available, so that if inbound does dry up, you've got the pipeline to back you up. But yeah, again, as well with what's going on in the wider environment, so you can tailor how you approach the conversation as well, and then consistently qualifying, right? Things do change. If you could collaborate with any brand, company or person to improve sales efforts, who would it be and why?
In terms of from an e-commerce perspective, it probably would be Shopify. I think that they're making so much noise within the industry, and they're just like, it feels like they're winning, like bringing on new clients like every minute, like, and it's such a range of clients as well. Like it's different merchants. They might be startups, or they might be enterprise level and merchants that might have been on a different platform and now they're on Shopify. And I think we've just recently brought Shopify into our remit in terms of what we want to start going out and doing. That's been like the last like year and a half, and I think really working closely with them to understand how their sales process works. How do they go out and target these types of businesses? to like maximize that e-commerce potential. I think it's just really interesting. And as well, like in terms of like the flip side of it, in terms of like the more like bespoke and mobile application side, I think I'd be really interested to work with like a crowdfunding type platform, because we work with a lot of companies that are startups. And I think like partnering with somebody that can help with the investment side, as well as like driving the growth in the sales pipeline, especially within the bespoke and startups, would be really interesting, because with the bespoke, like it's so endless in terms of what you can develop for them. Like want a platform, if they want a web application, if they want a bespoke e-commerce website or a mobile app, there's so many different types of conversations that you can have. And I just think that would also be quite interesting.
Yeah, great. Two great answers there. Two great answers. Nice. Now, going into a bit more detail on the partnership front, because it can be a great way to access a new customer base whilst having the credibility, because you've been maybe brought in via that partner, you've got experience working with that partner. That has the positive impact of then shortening sales cycles, because that trust is already there. However, I think the vast majority of salespeople underutilize partnerships. So my question to you is, how can salespeople more effectively leverage partners to generate leads?
Partners are so important to like lead generation. When I first started within like the sales role at Chilli Apple, there wasn't really much of like a partner ecosystem.
No,
there wasn't really anybody that we leveraged from. But I think they're so important, because there's people out there that are experts in what they do, whether that's e-commerce platforms, whether that's payment gateways, CRM, ERP. And I think that when you're building out a partnership, you've got to think of a few different things of why would we want to partner with that person. So you've got to look at your current client base. Is what they offer something that we can bring in to their tech stack? Is it something that would help them grow their digital, help them grow digitally? Yeah. You've got to build really good relationships with partners, because they're probably inundated of people wanting to use their technology or use their offering, and then you might not have a really good understanding of what it is that they do.
Yeah.
So building a relationship is really important, making sure that they're really well aligned with what you offer as an agency or a business. Do they align well with your type of clients that you work with? Is it something that you can also like leverage off of them, and vice versa? I think you've got to be really proactive when it comes to partnerships as well. You've got to show your interest in their product. You've got to make time for them. And it works both ways. It's a partnership at the end of the day. But having like those regular touch points, those meetups, doing events, networking, like really showing a real interest and an intent to their business, and also leveraging their expertise, their knowledge in your pipeline. It's just all about having respect and relationships as well. I think that's how you over time will then generate leads, through partnerships.
Yeah, I agree. I think when we think about sustainable partnerships, it has to be mutually beneficial for all parties involved. Otherwise, as you said, that respect and trust level, it erodes. And typically the partnership doesn't last too long following that, which is great. Have you got any examples of where you have leveraged partnerships to help you close more deals or generate more pipeline?
We have a lot of partners. Well, we don't just partner with anybody. We only partner with people that we think are, well, one, that we like them, we like their product, and we know that it's something that we can really like enforce within the client base, and also new leads. So there wasn't an existing ecosystem when I joined the sales team. Now there is, and we get a lot of revenue. Like there's probably around, I think this year we'll probably get around 50k commission from partnerships, which is really nice. Like, but it's also good because we know that actually the solution that we recommended is really worth that investment for the client as well. It's not just we'll just plug that in and make a deal close through that partner, because if it's not going to be right and it's not right for the client, then it falls on our head at the end of the day, because we're the ones that recommended it. But yeah, so like we work with a lot of our partners in terms of like, we work really closely with Magento, with Adobe. So closing deals within that, we leverage a lot off of working with Adobe to help e-commerce solutions and building out tech stacks for clients where actually that is the solution for them, and also like showing them the value of the platform and how it can help drive sales, how it can maybe help them grow their business. But yeah, like there's also like small wins that we have with partners. Like we partner with like a payment gateway, for instance, and we've just recently gone through like an overhaul of our existing client base, and I've said actually like you should use this payment gateway, and then introducing them and then having those quick wins where they're like, oh, like you've helped me gain, well, I've got less fees come out my bank account because they're much cheaper, and also you've saved me time and energy having these issues with payments, and it makes my life much easier. So yeah, there's lots of different examples, but they're just such a key part to our business and building out tech stacks. Like I say, they're experts in what they do, so we should utilize off of their expertise and get them to join in when there's particular issues and say, look, let me loop in so and so from this platform that can talk to you about how you can drive sales or growth.
Yeah, I think the key thing is there's got to be a value add for all involved, right? And as you said, it's got to be relevant. Otherwise, you're going to end up potentially damaging the relationship that you had. Brilliant. Lauren, that has been a fantastic session. Thank you so much for joining me. If you could give one piece of practical advice that someone can go and implement as soon as they stop listening, what would that be? And I'll put you on the spot here.
Yeah, you have. If you're in sales, you've got to be so organized. And I think that I am somebody that has endless amounts of lists, and I work off those priorities. And I think that if you're feeling stressed, if you're feeling overwhelmed, then take a step back, look at what your priorities are, focus on 3 priorities of that day, get them done, and just work off checklists. And also, like, I think just make sure that at the end of the day, like if you're working with businesses and it's something that you really want to close, like put in all the effort that you can and make sure that you're showing the value of that as well. Indeed. Lauren, thank you again.
If anyone does want to reach out, I guess LinkedIn's probably the best place?
Yeah.
Brilliant. I will put your LinkedIn URL in the description. Lauren, thank you so much. And to everyone listening, until next time. And that is a wrap for season 2. Thank you so much for joining us. It's been an absolute blast as always. Do keep your eyes peeled for season 3. It will be with you before you know it. Just to make sure that you don't miss out on it once it is available, why not hit that subscribe button so you're notified when it's hot off the press. In the meantime, feel free to engage with the community on LinkedIn or just reach out for a quick chin wag.